If you constantly kind of shoo a child away from something, over time, they will begin to learn that the task is not for them. If you tell a child, I got to finish cleaning the dishes, go play with Legos, go watch TV, eventually over time, they will learn that my role in the household is to watch TV.
You're listening to the Mindful Mama podcast, episode number 350. Today, we're talking about how to get your kids to help with Michaeleen Doucleff. Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast. Here, it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have, and when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clark Fields. I help smart, thoughtful parents stay calm so they can have strong, connected relationships with their children. I've been practicing mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of Mindful Parenting, and I'm the author of the best-selling book, Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. Hey, thank you, dear listener, for signing on to the Mindful Mama podcast today. This is such an amazing episode, but listen, before we dive in, if you haven't done so, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you've ever gotten any value from this podcast, please do me a favor, go over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review. It just helps the podcast grow more. It takes 10 seconds of your time, and I really, really greatly appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. In just a moment, I'm going to be sitting down with Michaeleen Ducleff, NPR's science desk correspondent and author of New York Times bestseller, Hunt, Gather, Parent. And I loved this book, and I loved talking to Michaeleen. And this episode is for you if you ever wished your child would help more around the house, right? Like, did you want that? I do. So Michaeleen shares secrets from indigenous cultures that can teach us about how to raise helpful children. She talks about some of the mistakes we make in Western cultures and how some indigenous cultures have really cracked the code in a couple different ways that are incredible. This is going to really blow your mind, this episode, I think. So I want you to listen for some important takeaways, how involving children when they're little will motivate them to help more, how boredom is not bad for children, and then the constant, you are always modeling behaviors. I know, I say that all the time, but it's so true. But this is a powerful episode. I'd love to hear your takeaways, and I can't wait for you to listen. So join me at the table as I talk to Michaeleen Ducleff. As I've already told you, I loved your book, Hunt, Gather, Parent. It's really fascinating. There's so much great information. When your daughter was a toddler, you were having a lot of difficulty. And I would love for you to just tell us what it was like for you then, because it's so helpful for us to realize we're not alone in the crazy of those years.
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, I do want to say that Rosie, my daughter, she is a really amazing kid in many ways. I don't want to, throw her under the bus. She is too much. She's incredibly smart and strong. Like I say, she's built like an ox, physically, mentally, she's really has so many qualities that parents would want, but what comes along with it is this persistence and strong will and just, high emotions, high energy, high intensity. And when she was from day one, she's been like that. But when she was a toddler, she started having a lot of tantrums. We're talking about one or two a day. And I just felt like anything I did kind of made them worse, really made them worse. And I would read the New York Times, I would read books and blogs, and I would try these things. And what would end up happening is that she would get worse. And then I would eventually get angry and start yelling. I mean, horrible, right? Yelling at a 2-year-old, horrible. And eventually, she would end up hitting me, biting me, kicking me. And it was such a struggle that, like I say in the book, I would lay in the bed in the mornings, just kind of dreading her waking up and dreading my time with her. And my husband and I were kind of hopeless, to be honest. We really felt like either we just didn't know what we were doing, or there was just this disconnect between us and her. And it was just going to kind of get worse as she got older. And yeah, it was kind of a really horrible period in our lives, to be honest.
I mean, I can relate to everything you're saying, because I've definitely felt all of those things, dreading, oh my God, I have to go back to my child. It's so difficult and all this. And you were given some interesting advice from your pediatrician. I just read this advice from the pediatrician. I was like, no.
Is that like to just walk away or just leave her alone? That was,
I forget. It was
I
like
mean,
it was like walk away. There was like, there was just a bunch of things. Where was it? The pediatrician.
yeah,
I
there
don't
was,
have
I
it
mean,
written
to
down.
me, it was always too, like this idea of like, being a firm, but gentle. I don't know. It was just this
Yeah,
weird kind of combination thing I kept trying to be, right? Like firm, but gentle. And like this, I was trying to use this voice that I kind of, I don't know. It was a very performative thing that I was trying to do. And eventually it just would not work. And then all this anger would come out of my body, which is the way I was treated as a kid, right? It was like,
Mhm.
there was a lot of
Yeah.
anger, a lot of yelling. And
Mhm.
so,
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And I love that, like, your answer to this, like my answer to this was like, oh my God, I need to like learn some things. And your answer was like, oh my God, I need to learn some things. But you are, a correspondent on NPR Science Desk. So you were like, let me go and go to the source. So tell me the story about where you went first.
yeah. So I was actually not trying to learn how to be a better parent on this trip.
Okay.
NPR had sent me to this little tiny Maya village in the Yucatan, about 2 hours from Cancun, kind of buried, nestled in the tropical rainforest there. And I was going to do a story about attention. Actually, there's been some interesting studies that Maya kids have better attention in certain situations than European American kids. And I was really trying to figure out what was going on with this. When I got there, I met a couple of parents, a couple of moms that really just like shifted my whole sense of what parenting was in the span of like 3 days, essentially. These moms had a completely different relationship with their children than I had ever seen in San Francisco, where I was living, how I'd ever been raised myself. First of all, there was very little bickering, arguing. There was no yelling. There was no resistance, is what I wrote down in my notebook. And I kept thinking, like, the children aren't resisting the parents and the parents aren't resisting the children. And like I say in the book, like my way of parenting was like this white knuckle ride on a Cat 5 Rapid. It's loud, it's dramatic, there's a lot of talking, energy. And the Maya moms in this village, like, if I felt like I was on this slow, gentle river, kind of meandering through this valley. Mm-hmm. And yet the kids were incredible. They were kind to their siblings. They were generous. I saw kids share potato chips with their little siblings without being asked. And they were incredibly, incredibly helpful. So one morning I was with Maria de los Angeles. I was in her kitchen and we were chatting, and her 12-year-old daughter was on spring break, and she woke up around 10:30, 11, walked past me and her mom and started washing the dishes from breakfast that morning. Nobody asked her.
Oh my God.
There's no church chart on the wall. She wasn't getting an allowance. I mean, and Maria wasn't really surprised at all. She was like, she's 12 and she should know what to do. She said, she doesn't do it every day, but she should know by now. And I left there really just actually for the first time feeling hopeful. Like, maybe my problems with, like, I couldn't even walk out the door in the morning without Rosie hitting me. And here this mom had, 3 daughters who were incredibly kind and helpful with each other. And I realized, like, maybe it's not me or Rosie, but maybe it's my culture. Like, maybe it's my culture hasn't taught me the best, easiest way to parent. And what I've actually been taught is actually a really hard way to parent, and a way that generates a lot of conflict between children and their parents.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to see that. And you talk about, like, the parents and the Mayan parents, like, they don't praise them. The kids develop this sense of responsibility. It's really fascinating. And you also talk to, so I love how you like dive into it. You're like, let me learn all this about this. And you also talked to David Lancy. He was an anthropologist that we've had on the podcast on episode number 262, dear listener, if you want to go listen again. And he talked to us on the Mindful Mama podcast about why we're so weird, but maybe you can give us like a quick like recap, like what you saw about us when you looked at us through the lens of other cultures.
Yeah. So after I got back from that trip to the Yucatan, I started to read actually one of David's books, Anthropology of Childhood. And I started to really understand that this a parenting approach that's in the Yucatan is actually really common around the world. You can go to Tanzania, to Malaysia, you can go really every livable continent and find this approach. And what is actually weird is the way we parent. And we are really the outliers. And David enumerates about 50 things that we do that you really can't find anywhere else in the world. And many of those things we kind of take for granted. We think they're kind of universal, or every parent has to do them. And if you don't do them, you're not a good parent. When in fact, nothing could be further from the truth, that these things aren't universal. They're not rooted in science. They're not rooted in history. But we've kind of been brainwashed in a way to think that we need to do them. And a lot of them actually make our lives really stressful. And again, cause a lot of conflict between parents and children. You're hearing a theme. A lot about what's in the book is about minimizing conflict and really teaching children to cooperate with you. That's really what Maria in the Yucatan has done, is she's gotten her kids to cooperate with her and work with her as a team instead of being kind of opposing her and being kind of a contrarian, which is what I was raising, a contrarian.
Yeah. I mean, we've even got like all the war metaphors for parenting. Like we need a united front, all that stuff. So what are some of the things you give us a few examples of the things that David mentioned that are like causing that we do differently? And when you say we, like Western culture, we're talking like US, Europe, Canada, Australia, kind of.
Yeah. Any European kind of ancestry is where this style of parenting originated, but it has, a lot of people have documented that it's leaked over into kind of highly developed areas. So, right, if you go into cities in many countries, you will see it. So it's the dominant way of parenting in the US, but you can, if you kind of move out of your cultural comfort zone, you can find this other approach in the US. So one of the big things that we do that's really, really strange is that we think that children need to be entertained. And it is our job as a parent to do that entertainment, either actually us doing it. So for instance, when Rosie was little, when I spent time with her, I entertained her. It was either, stimulating her by play, teaching her something, sticking a screen in front of her, or we outsource that entertainment, right, with classes and sports and activities and parties and these things that anthropologists and psychologists call child-centered activities, things that are made specifically for children and they're kind of separate from the adult or the real world. So this is unheard of in places and unheard of in Western culture until about 100 years ago. But this has massive numbers of repercussions, including a lot of conflict, because parents can't entertain their children forever. It's very, very high intensity way of parenting and it's exhausting. And so we end up then, relying on screens and TVs and things, things like that. But the other thing it does is it separates the child from your world. And what it kind of breaks that team component that I'm talking about. When the child is not entertained and is not constantly in child-centered activities, they start to be interested in what you're doing. And if you let them in, so while you're cooking, while you're cleaning, maybe you're running errands on the weekends, yard work, your hobbies, your own work, if you just kind of leave them alone, but let them be around you, they start to want to do it. They start watching, they start asking to be involved. And this is how children learn. That's how Maria's daughter learned to do the dishes, it's by being around her when she's doing the dishes, by being part of it and being included in those activities. So this is a huge, huge shift in the way we parent and has massive repercussions. The other thing, last thing, is that we talk to children all the time and we tell them what to do all the time, like massively. Even if you don't think you're doing it, I guarantee you're doing it way more than most parents in the world.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. If I haven't had enough sleep and I need to look awake, I don't worry about it because I have the Thrive Cosmetics Brilliant Eye Brightener. I am obsessed with this Brilliant Eye Brightener. It's this highlighter stick that brightens and opens your eyes. It makes you look alive and awake. And it makes you look like you've had plenty of restful sleep, even if you haven't. I'm obsessed with it. I have this like rose gold color. It just makes you look so alive. I love Thrive Cosmetics as a sponsor of the Mindful Mama podcast because they are so amazing. Not only is it like incredible products, like don't even get me started on the liquid lash extensions mascara. Holy moly, I will never go back to using anything else. Even if Thrive Cosmetics hated my podcast, I would use their liquid lash extensions mascara because it is so good. It is ultra lengthening. It's eye-opening. Seriously, it has more than 20,000 five-star reviews. You know, it mimics the look of lash extensions. It comes off super easy. It just glides right off with warm water and a washcloth. You don't even need soap. Is so lovely. I love it enormously. Okay, so high performance beauty and skincare products, clean skin loving ingredients. There's no parabens, sulfates, phthalates. It's certified vegan. It's cruelty free. And then the name Cause is in that name for a reason, because every purchase of Thrive Cosmetics supports organizations that help women thrive. It's this bigger than beauty mission. For every product purchase, Thrive Cosmetics donates to help women who are emerging from homelessness, surviving domestic abuse, fighting cancer, and more. So, you know, it's win-win-win. You're doing good for the world and you're getting these amazing products. I really love them. I love their Defying Gravity Eye Lifting Cream. It just instantly lifts and brightens the skin around your eyes. It's, you know, line smoothing, hydration. You get, you know, you soften, you soothe, you deeply moisturize skin. I don't get any like flakiness around the eyes again. And it just reduces circles and puffiness. I love it so much. Now is a great time to try Thrive Cosmetics for yourself. Right now, you can get 15% off your first order when you visit thrivecosmetics.com/hunter. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/hunter. That link is right in the show notes. If you want to just click on your phone and scroll down, you'll find it. thrivecosmetics.com/hunter for 15% off your first order. But you write about this too, but like that, then kids start to see us like that's our job, right? Like they start to see that I'm separate from the rest of the household. I don't have to do the things that everyone else does in the household. And mom and dad, their job is to entertain me, right? Like they're like in this special VIP zone in the household, which is, that's not like, this is, we don't even realize we're teaching our kids this, but we are teaching this. And yes, we definitely boss kids around all the time. This is like one of the big barriers to communication, like that I teach in mindful parenting is like this, that, I mean, we just are like, do this, do that, shoes on, shoes off, come here, go there. Yeah. Climb up, climb down. Don't do that. You know, it's just like,
I tell people like
if you're two, your world is a barrage of commands constantly.
Oh, constantly. And not just two, right? I mean, like I tell people, like, I accidentally recorded myself one day with Rosie I was doing a different assignment and I left the recorder on and I actually listened back to it. And that's when I realized, like, holy cow, like I am constantly telling this child what to do. And if somebody was doing that to me, it would make me irate. You know, it would make me a ball of anxiety and it would make me really mad. Like, stop telling me what to do. And the other thing I realized was because I was talking so much to her, which is what we're taught to do. The pediatrician.
Yeah, those are your pediatricians.
Yes. Narrate everything. I'm washing my hands now. I'm talking on the Zoom now. You know, I wasn't listening to her. And she was like, she was only like 2 when I did this, but she was really trying to tell me things. She was really trying to like contribute and she was really trying to like make a point. And I was just completely not listening. And it hurt me so much to listen to that tape. I started crying. I was just like, wow, not only am I bossing her around, but I'm not giving her a voice at all. And, you know, and yeah, this has massive repercussions on children and the difference. So I tell people, like, record yourself or count your commands. You know, you can use your phone to record yourself and then go back and count how many times you're telling the child something, whether it's a directive, like do this, don't do this, or feedback. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's the right way. Oh, I love that. Good job. Right. Like this is still feedback to the child. Right. I did this myself, and it was like 100 and some an hour. It was just like off the charts. And I'm not the only one. I count like at the park sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's off the chart. And there's actual studies with some groups, some hunter-gatherer groups in Africa, where a researcher did this. And for kids in this one group, it's like 2 to 3 an hour.
Wow.
And when we were in Tanzania, I did it again with the moms there. And again, it was like even less than 2 an hour. And this is really interesting. The vast majority of the commands are actually requests for help. So, go grab the knife, or hold the cup, or grab the bowl, or help your sibling. And so the parents are actually using these commands to teach the child to be helpful. They're kind of reserving them for that really like important task. And otherwise, I want to point out, they're not just ignoring the child. Like it is not at all. Yeah. Instead, they're watching the child really, really closely to make sure that if they need help, they can step in, to kind of see where the child's skill level is. But it's this very attentive observation, and that's something you can't do if you're constantly talking to the child.
It's so fascinating. And I love this. Like we talk less, right? And in the Mayan families, you talk about how you could see the sort of this process of how they help they sort of train their kids to be helpful. And one thing you point out, which I think is so amazing, and it made me like, oh, this is like one of the only books that made me want to like go back and do some things over, right? Like, I mean, I remember was that when kids are little and they want to help, we tell them to go away, like, right? And
yeah.
So one
Absolutely.
of the things we did, like with my second daughter, Sora, I had figured some things out, and like she now is 12 and cooks all this stuff. Like she wakes up in the morning. Sometimes she cooks, like sautés some mushrooms and garlic, and like a scrambled egg and avocado. Like it looks like some celebrity like chef's breakfast that she's made herself for breakfast. And then as I was reading your book, I was like, oh, when she was little, we had this stool. I had her cut things with the little wavy knife. We did all these things. Like we included her a lot. So tell us about this process. I was like, oh, at least like in the kitchen, we got this down. But
and it's never too late. I think this is one of the first questions people ask me. I was like, does it work for teenagers? I'm like, it works with adults. I have used it on adults in our household and not in our household. And it has definitely worked. So there's studies actually in the lab that show that, if you constantly kind of shoo a child away from something, over time, they will begin to learn that the task is not for them. And like you talked about with entertaining, that if you tell a child, I got to finish cleaning the dishes, go play with Legos, go watch TV. Eventually over time, they will learn that my role in the household is to watch TV, is to play, is to study, is, whatever that task is. Now, if you do the opposite and you include them in that, in the task that you're doing, or even just not shoo them away, just let them be there. Really, children just need to be around you when you're doing it. They learn without you teaching them. There's tons of data on that. That over time, they will see that, oh, this is part of my job. This is part of my role and purpose in the family, is to, come help with dinner, clean up after dinner, do the dishes, do the laundry. So one of the researchers told me, they use a very sophisticated form of inclusion in tasks. And part of it is just letting the child be there, not shooing them off. And another part is including them in very small things that they can do very quickly and easily. So I figured this out because I was giving Rosie way too big of tasks. I would be like, load the dishwasher, or set the table even, set the table, or like, clean the living room, these huge tasks for a 3-year-old. And then the Hadzabe moms in Tanzania really showed me that that's not it at all. It is handing Rosie a fork or two, and not, depending on the age, and saying, put these forks on the table, right? Or she's in the kitchen with me, handing her, some some cilantro, cut the cilantro, stir the pot. Even just when we're cleaning up the living room, I hand her a book, put this book away, right? So these very tiny, tiny little tasks that the child can do very fast. Then there is, and get it done and meets their skill. And then they feel like they're contributing. They're like, ooh, I put those forks on the table. That's all they need. It needs to be small, it needs to be doable, and it needs to be real. So it's not fake. And what will happen is over time, just that involvement will motivate them to want to help more. And the tasks will get bigger and bigger. Right. And so, now Rosie can really set the whole table, after years of like forks and plates and things like that, and this is really how every culture around the world, besides European culture, teaches children immense skills. So like up in the Arctic, children learn to hunt, they learn to fish, they learn to clean, butcher animals this way, starting at a very early age, being around the parents and having this little tasks to do. And they really can't be too small. When we were in Tanzania, I really learned this because the moms would do this to me. Like whenever we did anything, they would stick a baby on me, on my back, like you're carrying this baby, and they wouldn't ask, will you carry a baby? They just stuck the baby on my back. And then they handed Rosie something to carry. So every time we went somewhere, we were contributing, we were part of the team. And that's what gives that child that feeling like, oh, I'm useful and I'm needed and I'm connected to this person that loves me and that I love. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what a lot of kids are missing in America is this feeling of like, I'm part of this team and I'm useful.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break.
I think there's so many things that I catch myself doing all day long that, I can accredit to this program that I'm just very thankful. I'm very thankful that I have these tools and these skills, and I definitely feel like a better mom.
Just kind of taking that moment, like that breath before reacting to her makes a huge difference for me. And I feel like I've at least been able to like up my percentage of times of doing that. So that feels like a win.
This has been a game changer for me. And so I just think everybody should join it. We should all be more mindful.
And I thought the first time when I hear it, I said, oh yeah, this is me. I'm the mom who's constantly yelling. I'm the mom who has no patience. I'm the mom who has zero tolerance.
You can read a book and you can like what you learn about, but actually being able to implement it and get the feedback from others and the support from others to hear about kind of other families that are going through the same thing, that you're not alone, that you're having similar experiences and learn from them as well.
It really helps to see that you're not alone with your problems and other people have similar problems. And even if they have different problems, it's nice to see that the tools work for them. And it's always interesting to get tips on which tools to use in which situation.
I'm not really that good, I guess, at sharing my feelings or emotions, but your program just helps me to do that now in a way that I'm more, I guess, present in the moment and aware of what's going on with my son and my wife at the same time.
And it gave me a really good grounding about how to be more the person that I want to be, and gave me the tools to do that. And I really can't speak more highly of it.
And I felt like I got a lot of really good wisdom from you of things to try and how to connect with her and how to like keep the connection while still getting both of our needs met.
I'm just grateful for the program. Mindful parenting has taught me to be more present, be in the moment, and thus has allowed me to live in a more healthy parenthood for me and my children.
Yeah, that purposefulness. It's so crazy because like as you describe this, like every part of me is screaming like, duh, like
Yes.
some of the best truths that we get are the ones where we're like, duh, we should have known this, like this makes so much sense. Like, of course we start with teeny tiny tasks, but somehow it's been kind of like trained out of our culture and, in the sort of consumer culture of like, there's a lot of money to be made selling products for kids and telling us that we need to entertain kids. Whereas really it's brilliant for kids to be bored because they're like so creative, but then also they're interested in our lives. And I can hear like, a lot of listeners might think, well, it's going to take me so long to like cook dinner when you have a kid around. And that's probably true. But that's like, it's kind of like, that investment in this early work, like the investment in the early, I talk about like how to tame our temper and things like that. And some of that investment in the early work, like it just pays off so in huge dividends down the line. Right. And so I'm imagining you would probably have the same response to like that investment of time when your kid is younger is just going to like pay off hugely down the line.
Yeah. I mean, and people, and I feel this way, right? Like I'm rushed in the morning. You don't have to do it every meal or, it just even a couple times a week can make a huge difference. And think about how much it is, right? 1 or 2 meals a week over a course of a child's lifetime. That's a huge amount of training, And so it's like, I tell people like, start off with a weekend breakfast or a weekend dinner and just be like, can't just leave that calendar space open. And the activity is making the meal together and cleaning up the meal together. And like, that's enough for every child in the world when it's with their parents and with the people they love, their family, and I said, it's like, it to a lot of cultures, teaching a child to cook and clean and help and contribute is just as important as like piano lessons, or art class, more important in a way. And so they make a little bit of time in the week, or a lot of time sometimes in the week for the family, for the kids to do these tasks together. And another thing I'll point out is when a child is scheduled, there's some really interesting studies on this that haven't gotten much attention, but when a child is scheduled kind of constantly and doesn't have that free time and that boredom, they miss out on the opportunity to learn how to take initiative, how to plan their activities, how to sit there and decide, like, what am I going to do next? What's next in my life? What's next right now? Should I go do my homework? Should I go outside and play? And this is a skill that people have to learn how to do, and a skill that I use every day in my job. And when kids are allowed kind of that free time and that boredom, they develop this skill, and they're much more likely to do things voluntarily, their homework. They're much more likely to take initiative at school. And so, by scheduling kids all the time and not leaving some room open, kids are missing out on some skills. And David Lancey has actually documented some of the skills in some of his recent work, which is really interesting.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to get some notes on that after, because I'm working on book number 2 right now. That's great.
Yeah. And like, for instance, the skill of learning through observation, he talks a lot about. It comes from being with adults and simply watching, being with quiet adults. And he's documented the loss of this skill over time with children.
Yeah, no, because kids aren't observing anything, like I have to like, especially if they have a device, like they're not observing anything except that device. They're, it's amazing, the shifts in the world. But that's a whole other can of worms conversation. All right. So you then we went to the Maya, you like learned all this stuff. Then you went to Inuit families, which I think is so fascinating. And, I've had people tell me like, it's good for them to yell at their kids which I completely disagree with, because it like sends off our fight, flight, or free, it's like kids' stress response is the same as parents' stress response. But this is, huge in our culture is our temper, the conflict, the yelling is a big thing I had to deal with. Like when my daughter was 2, I was like ashamed of my yelling and scaring her. And the Inuit have a whole big thing going on around this like calmness. So can you tell us a little bit about this? I love this.
The golden rule up there, I've talked to like, I don't know, 100 elders and up there. And the golden rule of parenting is that you never yell at a child. And you don't yell at people in general. Adults, a mature adult doesn't yell in Inuit culture, and only children really yell, but you would never yell at a child. And they see it as just this most unproductive thing ever, that they'll tell you over and over again, you're teaching children to yell, you're teaching them to not listen. They stop listening. They'll tell you like, European white people's kids don't listen because the parents yell. They'll tell you all these things. And I started to kind of, this is what I needed. this was my weakness was yelling and my temper. And, I was not able to control my anger at all before writing this book. And I'll tell you, I'm 45 and I am able to control it really well now. So very, old dogs can learn new tricks. But what the parents really up there taught me was that there's a couple things going on. One is it's not about controlling the anger once you have it. This is really hard to do. That once you're angry, stopping it, like psychiatrists, neuroscientists will tell you, this is really hard. And yet we expect kids to do it. We expect this angry toddler to just stop, right? But really it's about having less anger towards your children in the first place. And that takes a couple of things. One of the key things is shifting your perception of their behavior and their motivations. So a lot of the elders will tell you, first of all, expect children to misbehave. All children misbehave. And the younger they are, the more they're going to do it. And it's not personal at all. And why would you get angry? This is just what kids do, number one. So you expect really bad behavior. And then number two is we often think that children are motivated kind of by these very kind of nefarious things. Like we think that they're manipulating us. We think they want to push boundaries. Even when my Rosie was a little baby, my sister said, "Oh yeah, she's already knows how to manipulate you." And I was like, "Oh yeah, she knows how to." She was like 6 months old or something, right? This is what we think. And I actually said this to one of the moms in Nunavut in the Arctic, and she just laughed at me. She was like, "She's not pushing your buttons. She's 2 years old. Like." She doesn't know how to do that. And there's no data supporting this. This is a complete myth. These pushing buttons, manipulating, testing boundaries, complete myth, cultural myth that we've created. But what it does is it makes us angry at them, right? I don't want my buttons pushed. I don't want to be manipulated. It makes me on the defense and it makes me mad. So in many cultures, parents actually see children as these irrational, illogical creatures that don't have reason or understanding, but their motivations are good. They want to help. They want to be kind. And there's actually good data to support that little kids want to help. And that's actually probably closer to the truth than what we think. They just don't know how yet. And they're really clumsy and really terrible, and they don't have control of their emotions. And so it's your job to show them, right? That like if they're upset and angry and hitting you, there's a part in this book, Never in Anger by Jean Briggs, which I cite a lot. She's up in the Arctic, and the mom is getting hit in the face with spoons by this like 3-year-old. And the mom is not even like perturbed by it at all. And she's just like, the child has no understanding. She has no reason. And that's all she says. And so it's this idea that like, if a child is getting angry at you, it's not personal. They're just this illogical, irrational creature. And so why would you argue with them? They're irrational, they're illogical. Instead, you show them how a person will respond and how a person behaves. And you do that by being incredibly calm, by saying nothing, by lowering the energy. You take the energy out of the behavior, out of the moment. And what that does is it has an incredible effect upon children, upon Rosie. Like I saw it, like the Inuit parents up there Rosie would be like full on tantruming, and the mom would just go over to her very calmly, voice would be down. She'd point up to the sky, maybe see the beautiful clouds up there, Rosie, like just an incredible calm state. And immediately Rosie would just like look at her like, and stop. And I was like, holy cow, like I'm doing the complete opposite, right? I'm talking to her a lot. Do you want this? What's wrong? Are you okay? Like,
You're like raising the energy.
Exactly. I'm putting more energy into the system, and Rosie's just coming up there with me, right? Like her emotions are just matching mine. And what I needed to do, it's not ignoring her. There's no ignoring, they see this, like if you ignore older children, you can ignore, ones that already know this, you can ignore it. But these little ones, they need to see and feel how to bring their energy back down. And they do it just by you being there, calm and quiet. And I have to say, it took a couple months for me to learn to do this when Rosie's, hitting me or wasn't hitting me. But once I started to do it, it was incredible how fast she stopped. And what you learn is that you're not stopping them yourself. You're not forcing them to stop. They're finding that response in themselves. And so they learn to regulate themselves over time. And I actually, this is going to sound crazy, but I actually started thinking of like her tantrums as this like a great opportunity for her to calm herself down and practice calming herself down. And so I stopped getting angry about them. It's like, oh, here's this opportunity. We're going to calm down again. She's going to calm down again. And it works. It absolutely works.
It's so brilliant. And I just want to like underscore what you said as you started talking about this, that it's not about controlling anger that has already arisen. It's about having less anger to begin with. And I think that this key, I mean, that's a key, is that mindset of, I mean, like I can imagine, you know, we assume nefarious intention, like we assume bad intention. And that's just the way, you know, that's just our cultural soup, right? That we just assume bad intention. And to have a completely different assumption about kids is going to take some practice and training, but like to have a completely different assumption of your, you know, not really capable, you're a little cray cray, you're you know, you're learning, your brain's not fully developed, right? You know, like, but you have good intentions, it really just takes a lot of the power out of it. But I mean, absolutely, like this whole idea that we're gonna yell at a child to calm down. I mean, of course, that's bananas and completely hypocritical. And to think that we're going to say, hey, you calm down when I'm having like this crazy temper tantrum, that's nuts. You know, it has to be us that uses our fully developed brain to regulate our feelings. And then our kids can kind of borrow our calm. They can see it. They can see, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. It's not about any kind of explicit teaching at all. It's about how is it, that modeling, right? It's like, how are we doing it? Right. Yeah.
It's the feeling, right? They are so tuned to our emotions, right? And there's a lot of data, right? Their emotions and their energy just mirrors ours, right? And if you want a child to stay high energy, then keep talking to them, and like even good talking, right? Even like, are you okay? What's wrong? You know, it's still very high energy and stimulating for especially a young child. And you know, if like sometimes our house will get really kind of high energy and everyone's kind of like getting upset, and I'll just say, okay, we're gonna have 10 minutes of silence. We're all gonna be quiet. 10 minutes, go. You know, now. And Rosie will keep talking, and sometimes my mom will keep talking, and like, you know, everyone would. But I just am quiet and calm. And a minute or so into it, they join me. And 10 minutes later, we all feel better. We all feel like Rosie and me and my mom, and we need more quiet in our lives. We just have too much energy, you know. The other thing I will say is a big component of it, and I talk less about this in the book, but is learning to devalue anger, right? So there's a lot of data that says that like if you value an emotion and you think it's productive, so if I think getting angry at Rosie is going to help, I will choose that emotion, and I will choose that. My brain will go to that emotion. But if I start to devalue it, like the way the Inuit culture really devalues it, they think that anger is like this very unproductive emotion, then you will be less likely to choose it, and you will be more likely to choose something else. And so I just started saying to myself when Rosie was really upset, or saying out loud to my husband, like, she doesn't mean it. She's trying. She's just a kid. She doesn't have understanding. So saying that, and then saying like getting angry at her is going to make it worse. And just reminding myself that it's going to make it worse. It's going to make it worse because I've seen it make it worse. Right. And so I think that's a big component of it as well. It's just really kind of believing that, kind of shifting the belief that like getting angry is really not going to do us any good. To me, those have been the two pieces of the puzzle. The third piece is practicing the other emotions, which I can talk about, but that is a very powerful tool. So when you're not angry, you're not upset, practicing the emotion you want to have, gratitude, awe, calmness. You know, there's a lot of new neuroscience that shows that if you practice these emotions, you know, at other times, they're easier to pull when you're upset or when you want to be angry. I tell this story that Rosie and I were driving to school one morning, and we had this horrible morning, you know, where like nobody was getting ready. We couldn't find anything. It was just, you know how it is. It was really bad. And I was really close to getting angry to her and like really wanting to yell at her. And we were in the car, and I looked up and I saw the full moon. And I was just full with awe because Rosie and I practice awe every day. And I was like, Rosie, the moon, look at the moon. And just in that moment, like all of the anger that I had and all the upsetness that she had, it just disappeared because we replaced it with awe. And that comes from like 2 years of practicing awe. But it's a really powerful tool.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. I am thrilled that Ivory Ella is a sponsor of the Mindful Mama podcast. Ivory Ella is an amazing, super cool lifestyle apparel brand that donates 10% of their profits to saving the elephants and other charitable causes. They're launched by college students. Ivory Ella then grew organically into one of the largest and most passionate communities of supporters wanting to make a difference in the world. As of this recording, they have donated over $2 million, and they continue to deliver good clothes for a good cause. I am so psyched about getting my Ivory Ella t-shirts for my girls, and maybe a hoodie too. Maybe something for me too. The colors are so cute. They have elephants on them. They're definitely very like trendy and great colors. I'm super psyched about the clothes and I feel so good about it. It's not just like some, graphic tee that I'm getting somewhere where it's not going to a good cause. Here, it's supporting saving the elephants. Ivory Ella had a viral launch. They trended over America's Country Music Awards in 2015. They sold 500 shirts in 10 minutes. And with Ivory Ella, a minimum of 10% is donated on all products, every single product. Every time you buy from Ivory Ella, you're making a donation to a cause that's important to you. Their causes such as Save the Elephants, Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, Cyber Smile Foundation, Reef Restoration Foundation, American Heart Association, Hearts and Bones, and more. Everything you buy, you are helping save the world little by little. They're comfortable, they're cute, they're clothes you can be proud of you and your kid wearing, and they make really great gifts. You can be part of the herd. Go get yours with 15% off using the code HUNTER at ivoryella.com/collection/new arrivals. So go to ivoryella.com/collection/new arrivals and use the coupon code HUNTER. You'll get 15% off. Oh, and you can find that link right in the show notes. Wherever you're listening to this, just look at your phone. You'll see a place where it says notes. Scroll down and you'll see that link, ivoryella.com. Use the coupon code HUNTER. I teach parents to meditate, right? Like I teach us to practice calm, practice peace, practice, even if your brain's going bananas, practice being non-reactive, right? Practice being still and non-reactive. And that's a muscle you build. And then have that muscle when you want it in those moments, right? I love that idea of practicing awe. My daughter the other day, she was like, look at that forsythia. It's so beautiful. And I had just been kind of in my head and I was like, yes, like, I love that. Like you're seeing this beautiful forsythia. Like that's amazing. I love that. You mentioned your mom, right? So you grew up, I imagine like this is probably radically different from the way you grew up.
Yeah, it is radically.
Did you and your mom's helping you with Rosie? Clearly, like she's around the household.
Yeah.
So what have the conversations with your own parents been like? And have you, as you've done this work and written this book, because it's really interesting because like, I mean, just to be fully transparent here, right? My mom listens to like most of these podcasts. She's read my book. A lot of my, I've had my anger, really a lot of it comes from like a habit from my dad, right? And I love my dad. He's an amazing person, super creative, really supportive, but he hasn't been able to read my book yet. Like, and it's really interesting. It's been over 2 years. Anyway, I'm just saying it's an audiobook too. But like, what's that like? What were those conversations like for you and your family?
Yeah, it's something I've thought about a lot, especially with my husband too, right? Because he didn't experience these travels that Rosie and I did. I think I've just been trying to use the same skills and the same tools with Rosie as with them, right? It's a really, a big part of this book is not forcing things, right? It's about encouraging and guiding and kind of seeding ideas and getting kids to think, right? Like asking questions and I think that's what I've been doing with them too. I might not be as patient with them, especially my mom, but like I've been trying to like get them to think, like telling my mom, like, getting angry at her is just gonna make it worse. I'll like say that to her, I'll say the same things to her. And sometimes with my husband, I'll tell him to read chapter 6. I'll just be like, could you just read chapter 6, but just trying to be patient and this, and just kind of using the same. So in the book, I talk a lot about training children, and a lot of cultures do talk about training kids. You have to train them. These are skills. Helping is a skill, just like math or science, reading is a skill that, controlling your emotions, executive functions are skills, and parents intentionally train the kids, but teach the kids these skills. Just like we do math and reading, we think that the kids kind of naturally learn these things, but they're skills. And really it's through modeling, showing, and making sure the kid is around you when you're doing these skills. And then giving opportunities to practice, right? And I think it's the same with the adults. So when I was first writing this book, I was like, my husband and I don't really help each other around the house. Like we argue over who's going to do the dishes, who's going to do the laundry. Like, how am I going to get Rosie to want to do these things and be part of a team if my husband and I aren't, right? And so what I realized, like, I just have to use the same tools with adults. And I use the tools, like, I get them to come into the kitchen with me while I was cooking, and then I give them small little tasks. And, so it's a very gentle kind of way of kind of guiding people without them really realizing you're telling them what to do or you're trying to change them. And it totally worked. Like in 6 months, he was cooking and cleaning, and so I would say it's the same. It's respecting people's autonomy and their need to make the choice and to think, but giving them some ideas and gently, kind of a gentle, constant pressure.
I love that, and I love that you brought up the idea and the idea of not forcing too, because we didn't really highlight that. Like how in these very helpful households, it's something that's encouraged. It's something that's asked gently, but it's not something that's forced, right?
Never. In fact, parents will tell you that will make a child not want to do it.
Yeah.
Which is really hard, right? It's really hard for me. Like, Rosie, can you do this? Can you grab this for me? And she's like, no, and walks away. And like every cell in my body wants to get angry at her, right? Because we've kind of taught that the child's not respecting you, or, I don't know, all these things go through your head, right? But you really have to resist the urge to force it, because it will backfire and it will make them hate the task, because I don't like to be forced to do things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the book gives you a bunch of tools to encourage it and and really kind of motivate the child. It's really motivating the child, right? There's a lot of examples I can give. Like even just a couple of days ago, Rosie was painting some bowls that she had created out of clay or something. She has the most amazing things. And my husband wanted her to paint them on a cardboard box, or, put something down so she wouldn't get paint on the porch. And he kept telling her this. And then I said, Rosie, I think if you put something underneath them, it won't scratch them. It won't hurt, it'll preserve the pots better. And then she just went over and got the cardboard and stuck it under, right? And it's like, it's true, right? It would protect the pots. It's protecting the porch, but it's also protecting the pots. And so it's about kind of seeing what she wants and where she's going and her kind of vision, and then joining in on that with my own vision, right? And it's subtle, right? But it's highly effective.
Yeah. And you have a lot of ideas in here, like for all those like everyday sort of things that we need to do, like get out of the house in the morning and like go to bed at night, and working with that child, your kid's need for autonomy, not forcing, but working with that. Anyway, there's a lot there. I love this book. It's so great. Oh yeah, the steps to training a child. I just want to just share. You have like kind of a 1, 2, 3 thing, which I just like love to like kind of leave the listener with.
Yeah. And I realize this, like every culture does this and we do it too. And I challenge the listener to go and like figure out 2 things you're training your child with this formula, because there are things that that I realized I was training Rosie to do that I didn't realize I was training her to do. So the things are modeling, right? So how are you handling the situation, or how are you executing the skill? So for instance, when you're yelling at a child, what are you modeling, right? And then the second thing is giving the child opportunities to practice. So if you want a child to learn a skill, you first of all make sure you're modeling it. So sharing, for instance, am I sharing? Do I share my food? Do I share the things I get? Are the families that we're around, do they share? If we're having a picnic at lunch, do they share their food? Or is everybody's, possessive, right? So what are people around the child modeling? And then opportunities to practice. How do you give a child opportunities to practice sharing? Well, you give them some cookies and you say, hey, go get these to your friends. Or let's pick out a toy that you like and go give it to a friend, right? So you actually set up very intentional opportunities to practice the skill. And then you acknowledge it. You don't need to praise it and say, oh, good job, you're amazing. You can just say like, yeah, that's sharing, that's generous. That's a big girl. That's mature. All kids want to be big. They all want to be mature. And so attaching it to maturity, this is a really common tool in many cultures, like attaching mature behavior, telling the child that, like, oh, that's a big girl. You shared like a big girl. And so it's really those 3 steps. So making sure you're modeling it and the people around them are modeling it, providing opportunities to practice. And, it can also be practicing through play, setting up a puppet show, reenacting events. Rosie and I will do, some cultures will do lots of like reenactments with kids. Like, okay, you hit your little brother, let's reenact that and practice doing it differently. So you can practice these really kind of very creative ways, and then acknowledging it somehow, just pointing out the value of it, that I'm valuing it for you. And so, yeah, I realized that like with yelling at Rosie, I'm modeling yelling. I'm modeling anger. I'm giving her a lot of practice at anger. And by just, really enforcing it, by doing it over and over again every day, I'm acknowledging it over and over again with a huge amount of attention. And so I was just teaching her completely the opposite of what I wanted, which was, calmness and thinking before you react. And so I was also teaching her not to be generous, which I didn't realize. There's just a lot of things, not being helpful, arguing about doing the dishes. I mean, there's just a tons of things that I was doing that was really the opposite of what I wanted to do.
I love this. Michaeleen, you're giving everyone I know so much food for thought here. There's so much here. I really love Hunt, Gather, Parent. Go find it wherever bookstores are. Wherever bookstore you want to go find it at. But I think it's really a worthwhile book. If the listener wants to reach out and talk to you more about what they've discovered, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Foodie Science. That is my handle, but you can also email me. And I think people have been asking for like a Facebook group or some more resources. So we're trying to put together a podcast, hopefully in the next year, but that will have hopefully a Facebook group and maybe a newsletter too. And I would also just say, go slow. These things are big changes and they take time, but a little bit of these things will really, I think, really help kids and you.
Thank you so much for having the balls to go on this amazing journey that you did and documenting it all and sharing it and for writing well and making it interesting and not bad writing and for coming on. I really enjoyed talking and sharing this time with you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's really, really a pleasure. I'm such a big fan. So thank you.
Wow, what a powerful episode, right? There's so much I took from Hunt, Gather, Parent, and talking to Michaeleen. And I have to report back to you, it's been a little while since I talked to her. And even my oldest daughter, Maggie, last night, she joined me in the kitchen and she chopped some cauliflower. I showed her how to do it, and she put the olive oil on it to roast it and salt and peppered it and everything. So slowly but surely, it's working, definitely. So anyway, if you have some takeaways about this and you'd like to share it with me and you want to share your wins, I would love to know. Please do me a favor. Share this episode on your Instagram stories. You can take a screenshot of it and tag me at Mindful Mama Mentor. And then when you're there, you might as well follow me there, and I'll fill your feed with mindful parenting inspiration. We'll get you some good stuff in there. And listen, I love being able to offer this podcast, but the people I help most are those who join the Mindful Parenting membership. And someone asked me recently, why is it different? Can't I just read your book? But this is the place where I offer coaching. In Mindful Parenting, we offer 36 hours of parent coaching a year. It's kind of amazing. Like, if you actually price that out in normal life, like, parent coaching is $100 to $200 an hour. So it's like easily over $3,500. Pretty amazing. So anyway, if you're interested in mindful parenting and want to get the support you need to really take your parenting to the next level, go to mindfulparentingcourse.com, get on the wait list, and we'll send you some awesome free info, and we'll let you know when we open our doors next time. Hey, thank you so much for listening. I'm wishing you peace and ease and some moments of great presence and joy with your kids, and may you really be able to put that distraction down for a little while, sit in quiet, practice that pause, do those things. They make the biggest difference in our lives. They affect everything. Our attention is really our most valuable resource, and I really appreciate you sharing some of that attention here and now to water your good seeds. So thank you so much. I hope you have a great week. Talk to you soon. Namaste.
Say definitely do it. It's really helpful. It will change your relationship with your kids for the better. It will help you communicate better, and I'd say communicate better as a person, as a wife, as a spouse. It's been really a positive influence in our lives. So definitely do it.
I'd say definitely do it. It's so worth it. The money really is inconsequential when you get so much benefit from being a better parent to your children and feeling like you're connecting more with them and not feeling like you're yelling all the time or you're like, why isn't things working? I would say definitely do it. It's so worth it. It'll change you.
No matter what age someone's child is, it's a great opportunity for personal growth, and it's a great investment in someone's family. I'm very thankful I had this.
You can continue in your old habits that aren't working, or you can learn some new tools and gain some perspective to shift everything in your parenting.
Are you frustrated by parenting? Do you listen to the experts and try all the tips and strategies, but you're just not seeing the results that you want? Or are you lost as to where to start? Does it all seem so overwhelming with too much to learn? Are you yearning for a community of people who get it, who also don't want to threaten and punish to create cooperation? Hi, I'm Hunter Clark-Fields, and if you answered yes to any of these questions, I want you to seriously consider the Mindful Parenting membership. You'll be joining hundreds of members who have discovered the path of mindful parenting and now have confidence and clarity in their parenting. This isn't just another parenting class. This is an opportunity to really discover your unique, lasting relationship, not only with your children, but with yourself. It will translate into lasting, connected relationships, not only with your children, but your partner too. Let me change your life. Go to mindfulparentingcourse.com to add your name to the waitlist, so you will be the first to be notified when I open the membership for enrollment. I look forward to seeing you on the inside. mindfulparentingcourse.com.